Game over, man. Game over. Johnny.
You're gonna need a bigger boat.
So serious.
Roll out.
I am Iron Man.
This is a tasty burger.
Welcome to the InSession Film Podcast.
Welcome to episode 559 for November 6, 2023, and I'm JD Duran, and once again, I am joined by the great Dave Giannini. Dave, thanks for being here once again, my friend.
Of course, probably for the last time before we let Brendan out of his cage. Back to the show. Yes. No, but happy to be here. And I won't spoil anything, but JD started me off talking about Scorsese, and he's ending me talking about something I don't like quite as much as Uncle Marty. So
I had to hook him in.
I knew it would happen.
We'd get there eventually. Yeah, I was able to get him to sign up by starting off with Scorsese. Last week, we talked a little Sofia Coppola. I knew he'd be down to talk about those two great filmmakers. And then we're going to end on a subject that maybe he's not quite as passionate about, but he's already signed up. It's too late.
Maybe passionate in the other direction. That's
true. Yeah, it might not be quite as positive.
Yeah, maybe.
Let's say.
Stay tuned.
But, where things are now, maybe those feelings are warranted. We'll get to that here pretty soon. Before we get to that, though, we'll start off the show by talking about Alexander Payne, because he has a new film coming out, The Holdovers, that is getting a wider release this weekend. But circling back to last week's show, Dave, are you actually getting said Holdovers this week, and are you going to have to drive to Cincinnati?
Believe it or not, it has made it to one theater in Lexington.
Okay,
only
there
one.
You go.
Only
Just
one. It's sadly not the one closest to me, but you know what?
Yeah.
Because I am a lover of the forum, I'm willing to drive that extra 10 minutes. That's fine. I don't
there
have
you
to
go.
drive to Cincinnati. I'm okay.
Okay, there you go. We can save Dave 3 hours.
Yeah,
he can
for real.
just drive a little bit further down the road.
Yes.
That is exciting. So that is getting a wider release. We'll talk about Alexander Payne, and we'll do it in a similar format to what we did with Scorsese and Coppola the last few weeks. But speaking of Alexander Payne, I actually want to start off here. I was supposed to see The Holdovers last night at the Miami Film Festival. And I wanted to bring this up because in recent weeks, Dave, we've talked about the film going experience and, the festival circuit. We talked a little bit about that last week with how a lot of critics sit in this privileged position of being able to see these movies in advance because they're able to go to these festivals or they live on the coast and have access to a lot of these films. And I was talking about how challenging that is for me as a father of two. I can't just on a whim go to Toronto or New York, as much as I would love to do that. It is very difficult. Instead, I get to go to a festival in my backyard in Miami. But even with the Miami Film Festival, it's still one I have to be diligent about with my planning, because it takes about 40 minutes to get there one way from where I live in more the Fort Lauderdale area. And again, nothing's changed. I still have 2 kids. So I can't just be gone all day. I have to plan accordingly. But I was able to go to Miami to see a few films. I unfortunately didn't get a chance to see The Holdovers because, and I don't want to get too much into it now because we'll have a review of this coming up here in the next few weeks. I'm not even
JD
sure
only
when it's
wants
coming
to
out.
talk about movies like this with Brendan. I get it. It's fine.
Okay, so I did get to see Andrew High's All of Us Strangers. And that is a movie that you need to plan your entire day around. You can't see that at a film festival. Those that saw that movie at a festival and didn't cancel their plans the rest of the day, they must be dead. or have no soul or emotions, because that is a movie that will absolutely obliterate you. At least it did me. And so I couldn't go straight from that movie to the Holdovers. I needed some time to process, and so I left. I did not go see the Holdovers. But yeah, All of Us Strangers definitely.
I'll be sure to check that out sometime in April when it gets here.
When it gets to Kentucky.
Yeah, well, I'm sure it'll just come to streaming, and that's when I'll be able to see
Exactly.
it. But definitely looking forward to that one. Yeah, for sure. We talked a little bit before we started recording about this idea that, like, I legitimately don't know how reviewers who go all in on these festivals do it. Like these,
I don't know how they
festival reactions on 15 different movies in 2 days, and I just like, man, I can't hold that much in my brain and really take in a movie. Like, if I watch more than 2 movies in a day, like, am I really watching them? Like, am I really remembering? You know. Like that's got to be tough. I don't envy them that. I do envy the opportunity that they have, but not the exhaustion and the cost and all that good stuff.
Yeah, I don't know if I could go at the same pace that some critics do, where they plan their entire day from 6 a.m. to 11 p.m. just watching movies back to back the entire day. And I did it in a very small scale, right? I watched 2 movies Saturday, and look, that was a lot for me, having to travel to Miami, still check in on the kids and what's happening at home, and watch the 2 movies. I mean, I think it would be fun to still, experience a Toronto or a New York, maybe catch 3 or 4 movies in a day, but I couldn't do that for like a whole week like some of these critics do.
It's wild. Like,
it's a lot, man. And some of these films are really like All of Us Strangers is a movie, all joking aside. It is an extremely affecting movie. Very poignant. You really need some time to wrestle with its emotions and its ideas. And I love Alexander Payne. Alexander Payne would have been a great remedy to the melancholy I was certainly experiencing, but I didn't, in a weird way, I didn't want that to just go away though. Like, I really wanted to sit on it.
It feels mildly disrespectful to just be like, okay, I just went through an emotional journey that people put years of their lives and millions of dollars into. Hey, funny man, make me laugh. Like, it's just like, let me just sit with this and take it in.
Yeah, exactly. And without giving too much away, I think it's fair to say, though, the film wrestles with a family dynamic of sorts, All of Us Strangers, that is. And so immediately watching that movie, I just wanted to go home and hug my kids. And thankfully, because it was in my backyard, so to speak, I could drive home and do that. And that's what I did.
Pretty quickly. So. Yeah. I love, though, that JD, for those of you who are watching on video, you can tell that he's like flexing his love of Alexander Payne with his copy of Nebraska just beside his head. I see you.
Oh, we'll get to it. We'll get to it. Yeah. Oh, I love that movie. Yeah, we'll certainly get to that. But yeah, I just wanted to start off this conversation by talking about the one festival experience that I have had after last week's conversation. I thought was a fun little irony. But a big thank you to the folks over at the Miami Film Festival. They were really great in helping us out, and it was a great time. Really enjoyed it.
I love JD talks for 30 minutes about all these people. They're so privileged. Hey, me too.
Hey, me too. In my small little space, that I could do.
Take what you can.
I take what I can.
Nothing wrong with that. I'd do it. I mean, I hate you, but like I would have done it too. So
well, and that's the thing, because if Kentucky had their own and you could have seen everything that I did, you certainly would have been there. Definitely. But it's
Kentucky, not Miami. It's not.
and look, even though it's in my backyard, I have to give my wife credit, because the only reason I still get to go is because she says yes. The moment she says, no, I need you at home. We have 2 kids, and one of them is, a newborn. not newborn. He's 7 months, but he's a baby.
What's the worst that could happen if you left him alone for like 10 hours? I mean, like,
I mean, they would survive.
They'll be fine.
Sure.
I mean, we're just we're toughening them up. We're testing their resolve. Really,
exactly.
This is tough love. Okay.
Yeah, exactly. I'm sure there are worse parents out there.
Yes. When your wife listens to this, I'm kidding. I would never recommend that he leave his children alone.
Yeah. And so like I only get to go because she says yes, like all of those challenges still apply.
Yep.
And again, like even if, because they had showings all day Saturday, all day Sunday, but I could only fit in 2 a day essentially. Because of those said challenges. So it's not like I can just make it a whole weekend and never see my family at all.
Yeah, unless you never want to see your family
unless,
again.
Unless, doors, locks changed.
Yeah, exactly.
You got to find your own way. But yes, anyway, thanks to the folks over at the Miami Film Festival. Did have a great time. Look forward to talking about those movies when we get to them. Before we get to Alexander Payne, though, Dave, one more quick question for you. I don't have to spend too much time on this, but I am curious. I wanted to bring this up because there was a trilogy that came out in the last decade. It's a blockbuster trilogy even. Mm-hmm. So this tailors itself to some of the conversation we've had over recent weeks. I'm curious where you sit on it. However, and I have been very vocal about this since War for the Planet of the Apes came out, but I think that Apes trilogy, the new one, is, and I say this without any sort of irony, I think it is one of the best trilogies we've seen over the last 20 or 30 years. I think it is genuinely phenomenal. Where do you say?
Yeah. I don't mind that take. I think that's accurate. I think the first is you got to kind of wade through some stuff with the first one. It's fine. I remember enjoying it when I saw it in the theaters, but it's not one that I revisit. But the second and third are also, if I'm remembering right, are done by Matt Reeves.
Yes.
Like that man, God bless him. That man could do anything. Like whether you want to talk about something called Let Me In, or you talk about the Apes movies, or you talk about comic book movies, that man knows what he's doing. And he has a real gift for making genre or, tights and capes movies, but that are real movies. Like that have a point of view and have a lot of thought behind them and don't just feel like a corporate exercise. So those second and third movies, I think, are basically 5-star movies. I think they're incredible.
Yeah.
I think other than Lord of the Rings, those are the only movies where I'm like, yeah, maybe we should give motion caption actors Oscars. Because there's it's not just Andy Serkis, who is the best part of those movies, to be fair. Toby Kebbell is great. I mean, it's just, they're tremendous movies, and, find a way somehow through the special effects and CGI and motion cap and all that to have something to say about humanity and the mistakes that we consistently make. So those second and third movies are really great. But it's not going to be a trilogy, JD. We just can't stop.
No,
we got to keep going, But I don't know that I would go that hard for them, only because the first one, James Franco, like, I'm supposed to believe James Franco is smart. I don't know if I can really get behind this. I know he went to Stanford, but he comes off as a dummy, like he just does. And they rest a lot of the heart and the care on his character, and he's fine. He's serviceable. But really, especially when you watch that movie with the knowledge of watching the older movies or reading the original book, where it's headed. So the interesting thing about the first movie is trying to kind of plot, how do we get from here to where I know we're going to get? And then once you get to the second and third movies, I feel like that kind of goes away, and you're so involved in what Reeves has created that you're just like, I'm here for this story. So to me, there's a pretty large leap between 1 and 2 and 3. That's my only critique of that trilogy, really.
I think that's fair. I am coming at it, I guess, from the other side of that coin. I do agree that the latter two films are the better ones.
Mm-hmm.
I think Rise is maybe a little underrated in this conversation, though. I think it's actually quite good. I think its emotional beats are really well earned. It's an engaging narrative. Maybe you have to get past the Franco of it all, but I don't mind him in this. In fact, I much prefer his performance here than, let's say, his sulking performance in the Spider-Man movies. Although Raimi's Spider-Man movies, on the whole, are probably better movies, at least the first two.
Yeah,
I think I probably come at that trilogy with what you're saying about the Planet of the Apes one, because Spider-Man 3 I don't love.
It stinks.
It's
movie.
Not great. Yeah,
bad movie.
It's not very. And
it's
that's
okay. It's a bad movie.
And if we're just simply, indulging in the futility of comparison,
sure,
that's what would keep the Raimi Spider-Man trilogy from trumping this one, because that third film isn't very good.
Yeah, I think Spider-Man 3 is well worse than Planet of the Apes 1.
For sure.
This one is still serviceable and does its job, and I enjoy my time with it. And it has that great moment where Caesar finally speaks, and that is talk about earned. Like that's one thing that really impressed me in that movie is how long they waited to allow that actual verbal communication.
Yes.
Yeah. Which had to be tempting to jump and so we could have more. But I really liked that they kept it at no.
I think
a great moment.
It is really great. I agree. I think the film fundamentally roots you in Caesar's conflict in this really great way. And I think as a result, while Dawn, for many reasons, works great on its own terms, but I do think some of it is more impactful because of the brilliance of Rise and its emotional beats. I think it does a really great job of really building a foundation for Dawn and War to really go to new levels. So it doesn't reach the heights of the latter two, but it's because it's building that concrete foundation and it takes its time. But Caesar as a character, I think, is really fantastic. Again, it really roots you in his emotional conflict. And with that dynamic with Franco's character. And again, I do like Franco, at least in this film. I don't always love Franco. I'm with you there, but I do think this is one of his better performances, especially in a big movie like this.
Sure.
And what are you going to say about Andy Serkis? The man just knows how to do motion capture. And that absolutely continues into the latter two to the point where he should have been considered for awards. And he was on the InSession Film side of things. Brendan and I both nominated him for at least Dawn. I think I had him nominated for War as well. I can't really recall.
Really good.
Brendan, but
I think I just feel like the first one suffers a little bit from its lead performance, and there's just not as much of a solid directorial hold on that movie as there are the other two. And you can tell, you can feel it when Reeves is there. It's like everything feels specific. He's making very specific choices. There's no fat on those movies at all. And I feel like in the first one, there's a little fat. There's some stuff where you're like, okay, let's move forward. Let's get to where we're going. And those second two movies, especially like the opening of the second film, like is a stunner. Like it's just, it's nice to see Matt Reeves like do exactly what he wants with his career. Like he seems to just be picking and choosing. I'm going to do this now. I'm going to excel at this now. Watch me, and he's doing a great job.
Absolutely. And as much as I really do like Rise a lot, but Dawn and War are extremely good. And the motion capture of it all is great. I also love the scores to these films as well. Michael Giacchino's score for
there's
the
JD is, I know. There he is.
I dare anyone to listen to that score for War and not be moved. It is extremely affecting. It's so good. And I think what I love about War, and it might be my favorite of them because it is the movie where Matt Reeves is not afraid at all to, again, a huge blockbuster movie. I don't know what the budget for it was, $250 million. I don't know. Obviously, it's a big, expensive movie.
It's a big one, yeah.
And he's not afraid to slow that movie down often to emphasize its melancholy. And it comes through in the imagery and the cinematography and the gestures of these characters and that beautiful, tender score from Giacchino that is just so good. There are not very many modern blockbusters that are willing to do that. Yeah, and especially execute it the way that film does.
Yeah. You know what my only complaint about these movies is? The titling. I just like, which one is... How are you going to start with Rise and then go to Dawn? Like Dawn is the beginning. What are we?
Dawn, and then you rise, and then you war.
Yeah, every time I think about these movies, I need notes. I'd be like, wait, which one is terrible James Franco in? Okay, that's Rise. I always get it wrong. Like I always have to have the Wikipedia open. Like I know they're very different movies, but sometimes I miss 1, 2, 3. Like can we just, even if we just put Planet of the Apes 1, Rise, that would be fine.
Yeah.
Give me something to grasp onto. That's all I ask.
I hear you. Here, my hot take though for the trilogy, and I know you're going to push back hard on this, which is fine. My hot take though is that I think I like Franco more than Jason Clarke's character.
Yeah, well, you are a bad person. I mean, that's fine. Yeah,
Look,
I mean, it is an emotional character. It is all about care and consideration and love. So that's got JD written all over it. I get that. It's fine. I would obviously disagree that it's a better performance. I think Jason Clarke is.
I'm not talking performance. I'm talking about the character, and so. That includes the writing on the page. I don't, and that's really.
Look at this guy backtrack. You see this? He's like, wait. I'm not going to say
nuance here. I'm including nuance. Okay,
look, just own it. Say it with your chest. James Franco is a better actor than Jason Clarke. No. Just say it.
Look, we're not going to Twitterfy this, okay?
That's where I'm going to put it in right now. I'm going to be like, you're never going to believe it. You'll probably edit this out, but.
Yeah, no, I mean, I agree Clarke is the better performer and arguably gives a better performance. I think Franco's character is a better written character. I don't love the writing of Jason Clarke's character.
Sure. Yeah, no, that's fine. Yeah, absolutely. I just think the second and third movies are also just more my type of flick, man. I was just like, fair.
I love them too. Yeah.
And dour and down and dirty and just like, let's see what actually goes down when the world falls apart. I'm like less interested weirdly in the spectacle of the bridge fight than I am the like, let's get in the forest and give these apes some real weapons. Let's see what happens.
Which is, totally fair. I guess what I love about Rise and what it speaks to me even beyond just the emotion of it is, again, it is billing itself as this blockbuster movie, and the only action beat is in the final 10 minutes.
Yeah.
It's a movie that methodically takes its time, and it wants to build character. It wants to establish stakes, which a lot of movies, maybe some will talk about at the end.
Interesting. Coming out swinging before I can even say a negative thing. He's gonna beat me to the defender.
Look, I'm a defender of that universe. We'll get to it, but I'm just saying.
You see how he will just run you over with that bus. Fans of spectacle, he's just like, yeah. I defend those, but also they're stupid and worthless. And
I didn't say that.
See,
not saying that. I'm not saying that. I have more or less defended a lot of it, but I can admit that at times it stumbles. And I'm saying there's a lesson to be learned when you look at Rise and how it builds character and stakes. That's all I'm saying. That's all.
Your movies don't matter, says JD Durant of InSessionFilm.com.
Anyway, it's a great trilogy. That was a lot of pretext to get to what did you think of the trailer for Kingdom of the Planet of the Apes?
It looks like a Planet of the Apes movie. Like there's not, I mean, there's stuff to it, but so here's what I'll say is that I don't like the fact that Matt Reeves isn't doing it. Like he will be very missed, but Wes Ball, kind of an underrated director of action. Those Maze Runner movies, whatever you think of them, script wise, which are, based on books and all that stuff, it's YA stuff. Those action sequences are filmed really well. So I'm interested to see what he does with that. And I hope that this movie is really well written. But I think, and the original Planet of the Apes is proof of this. The longer you go in these worlds, the more ridiculous it gets. And now we're getting, at least from the trailer, we're getting to the point of the Charlton Heston version.
Yeah, we're getting closer to that.
Yeah, where humans are much more involved and they've been beaten down and now they're kind of crawling through the underbrush, but now we're gonna add birds of prey, I guess, because why not? Because it looks cool. Fine. And it does look cool. Like I feel like I'm doing this to protect myself, but I'm going in with low expectations. I'm going in, and that's sad that I'm going in only hoping to be entertained and kind of not much else, because it does feel much more spectacle driven than the last two movies. And again, this is a 110-second trailer. Who knows? Maybe it is Wes Ball's treatise on grief. Who knows? But
you never know.
It's probably going to be like cool apes fighting, and that'll be fun. That'll be enjoyable. I'm a person who owns the entire original series on Blu-ray, and they are ridiculous, and yet still really enjoyable, like in a fun, silly way. And but I don't want this movie to be that. I don't want it to head that way, but I feel like I'm kind of hedging to make sure I don't get hurt.
No, I think that's very fair. I equally wonder if this will tread any of the campy territory of the original, since we're heading in that direction clearly, or is it going to continue the gravitas of the Matt Reeves films? The trailer seems to indicate the latter more than the former, but who knows when we actually get to the film. My biggest concern in all of this, aside from your vivid point there on Matt Reeves not being back with this franchise, this is the first of these movies post Disney acquiring 20th Century Fox.
Oh yeah, I forgot about that.
So this is going to be more under the Disney brand than the Fox brand.
God bless.
And that makes me a little nervous.
Why are you trying to ruin my night? You just made this worse. God, I forgot about that. Dang it.
But that adds to my trepidation, to your point. I mean, the trailer does look really cool. I agree. I think there's a lot to take away from that trailer and be excited about. The trailer, admittedly, did reinvigorate my love for that trilogy, and I really do love it a lot. This looks like it has potential, but given the circumstances surrounding it, I just don't know. I don't know. It's hard to say.
Yeah, I mean, it's hard, it's hard not to get excited when you see visuals like that, especially in a trilogy of what was a trilogy that you've really enjoyed, and I have too. And it's just like, yeah, okay, we're back. But Disney is not really known for taking a whole bunch of risks. That's not really their, and that's not a shot. That is how they've made trillions of dollars, by really going for what they know works. And in some ways that may be stabbing themselves in the back a little bit recently, but they've done a really good job at building a magnificent, popular, money-making brand. But those movies, these Apes movies, feel like, and they made a lot of money. Like they made good money, as I recall.
Yeah.
But it's like they did it in spite of that. Like it feels like they really still did want to tell an interesting story, and it wasn't about, selling action figures. It was about, telling a story about humanity. Like the fact that they have a whole sequence in one of these movies about like, traitorous apes who go to the side of humans, for pay. Like that is a very specific thing that they put in there that I'm not sure if a Disney owned property would have gone for something that dark, So it'll be interesting to see where this heads exactly.
I agree. And I don't think it'll be a James Cameron situation, because something like The Way of Water was also 20th Century Studios. Some of that, I'm sure, was pre the acquisition. Some of it was after.
Who's going to tell James Cameron what to do?
Exactly. Like who's going to tell James Cameron, no, they're going to let him do his thing.
Wes Ball is not quite on that James Cameron FU money level. Like he's just not there.
Exactly.
So it's Wes. Most of us are not.
Exactly. I think I'm pre-arguing with the Twitter sphere or the comment section on YouTube as far as like, well, The Way of Water was 20th century. It's not quite the same.
It's not the same at all.
Not the same. Yeah. So I am a little bit dubious, but trying to be hopeful because I do think that the footage they showed us was promising.
Yeah, it looks pretty cool. Yeah, and I like the fact that it apparently takes place, a fair amount of years after.
Yeah, it's like
which is
a couple
smart.
Of generations later.
Yeah, it's smart when you have a new director and a new story. It's not technically a reboot, but it's kind of like a soft reboot where you're like, okay, it's in the same world. But forget about all that really great stuff you saw in the last 7 hours of movie because we're not that. We're
Which is why the Caesar trilogy can stand on its own. It's similar to what we're gonna get to here soon with the new Hunger Games movie, right? Because that takes place decades, 100 years before Katniss. I'm not even sure what the timeline is, but it's far apart enough that we know that the two are, they're distinct timelines in action and drama.
And I think the thing that helps us more than anything else is it's been 7 damn years.
Yeah, it's been a while
since the last one. So, there are going to be people like, what happened in that? This movie will probably explain it to me. And I'm sure they will. They'll have a prologue that'll get you there. And then you're like, okay, we're ready to go.
We're back into it. Absolutely. Anyway, looking forward to it. We'll see how that pans out. Let's go ahead and move on, though, to the world of Alexander Payne. He hasn't made a ton of movies. What has he done? 8 movies? 9?
Sounds about right.
Something along those lines. What are your thoughts on Alexander Payne?
It's interesting. He is a blind spot, but also not. Like there are some movies that you would be like, I can't believe, Dave, really? You haven't seen that movie? Like I haven't seen The Descendants. And I haven't seen Downsizing. But I was warned away from Downsizing by many people. So I don't feel too bad about that.
Need to. Yeah, you can. That's a blind spot you can maintain.
Yeah, just don't even look. It's fine.
Exactly.
And the movies I have seen of his, most of them I like. I'm sorry to tell you that the one I don't like is the one you love. That's sitting right behind you. I didn't. Okay, and fight. And not like is strong. I didn't have a real connection to it. It didn't really grab me. And I thought the performances in it were quite good. But the story itself, I was just kind of like, it ended. And then I immediately forgot that movie. Like it just disappeared from my memory. But if you take a look at his filmography, like there's some greats in here. Election, fantastic. About Schmidt, great Nicholson performance. Sideways has been talked about ad nauseum, especially with Paul Giamatti coming back for the Holdovers. I think this is the first time he's returned to an Alexander Payne movie since that absolute classic. Like just a great movie. One of the few movies that got like festival reactions that were just insanely positive that I watched, and I was like, okay, yeah, I get it. Most of it, it just feels most movies you're like, oh, that's festival fever. You've seen too many movies in too little time, and you forgot what a movie was and what feelings were, and you're just, you just had a strong reaction. But most of his movies I've at least enjoyed. I think he is in some ways a very singular director. Like when you watch an Alexander Payne movie, you know it's his. He has a very particular style and a very particular cadence to his films that are
Yeah.
solely his own, which puts him in a very small category of directors. Honest to God, there's so many directors where I'm just like, do you even have a point of view? Are you even interested in? Or are you just a director for hire? And he definitely, you can tell, picks and chooses his films very carefully.
Absolutely. I agree with a lot of what you're saying. He does make very distinct movies, even if he, in a lot of ways, is similar to a Jeff Nichols, who I also love, because Jeff Nichols makes one type of movie, but he's
Yes, it's
very
true.
good at what he does. And Alexander Payne is in that same camp for me. I love the way he balances humor and pathos. Love the writing of his characters. At times, there's almost a buffoonery to them that I admire, but underneath the facade of that farce is something deeply human and moving as it relates to either an individual succumbing to whatever emotional vulnerability is going on in their life, or it has something to do with the relationships in their life, whatever the case may be, depending on the movie. But I think he's really great at tapping into that humanism amongst the farcical of what's happening on the surface. And I love that. I absolutely adore Alexander Payne. He's one of my favorite filmmakers, honestly. There's only one movie on here that I would argue is not good, and that is Downsizing. That is far and away his worst movie. I don't know. And I think it's because honestly, it's the one movie where he goes outside of his wheelhouse. Imagine
even
Jeff
from the
Nichols.
trailers, it doesn't feel like one of his movies.
It really isn't. I mean, imagine Jeff Nichols making a New York movie.
No, I refuse.
It wouldn't
Don't
work
want it.
because that's not.
Don't want it. I don't even.
at all.
I'm mad. I'm like, honest to God, mad. You even said those words. Like I just like it doesn't even exist, and I'm like just full of deep rage.
And exactly, like it just it wouldn't work. That's not his ethos, and you don't go to a Jeff Nichols movie, expecting that, and that is Payne and Downsizing. I haven't seen the Holdovers yet, but it sounds to me as if he's getting back to his roots, which I don't think is a bad thing at all. And, it's partially what I love so much about Nebraska. Nebraska, to me, is his best movie. I absolutely adore it. And I think it's because it's a culmination of everything he had done previously leading to this movie that is, one, unique in its filmmaking style. It's even a little bit unique in its structure, but at its heart, it has the comedy and the humor. It's a hysterical movie, but it's also really poignant. I love what the film has to say about family and nostalgia and the memories we cherish with our families, because so much of that movie is about Woody, the Bruce Dern character, perhaps succumbing to his dementia. And this is the only time that David is going to get to have this experience. This might be the last meaningful experience that he'll ever have with his father before the dementia takes over. So as absurd as it is, he just indulges his father in it. And along the way, he learns so much more about his father that he never knew before. And it brings understanding, it brings empathy. And I love how, again, it's funny along the way, but it's also deeply poignant and human. And I love, and this is the other thing that I love about performance, which we've talked about many times here on the show. I love a good loud performance, don't get me wrong. But an actor will always speak to me more through subtlety and introspection. And that is Bruce Dern in this film. Bruce Dern, I don't know if he emulates a single emotion, and he doesn't need to. He gives one of the best performances of 2013 by simply emoting through stoicism. It's almost Ryan Gosling-esque in how great it is. And I love how Payne is able to give us nuance to David through Bruce Dern's stoicism. Like that's a tricky thing to pull off. And I think he does it immaculately, not just in his writing and in his direction, but of course the performance he gets out of Bruce Dern, and even Will Forte, who is incredible in
He's
that
really
movie.
good in that.
And
yeah.
you just
shockingly.
I know you don't think of Will Forte as giving those kind of grandiose performances, and and we don't need him to in a lot of the movies he does, right? He's just a great comedic actor, but in this film he goes way beyond what we're used to with him. And I think, he equally gives one of my favorite conversations of that year among that entire cast, which is excellent. So to me, that's his best.
Yeah. I think one of the things that Payne does really well, and this sounds like a backhanded compliment, and I promise you it is not. It is his casting choices, because he tends to do one of two things. He will cast an actor in his wheelhouse like Nicholson. I mean, that's it. Just almost, it feels like no one else could play that role. Like it's just the role that older Jack Nicholson was meant to play. Sure. Or he casts way against type, like the Will Forte performance you mentioned. Yeah. And he's able to get great performances on either side of that coin. And I think Bruce Dern is a really interesting choice because if you watch him throughout his career, he has the ability to do both. He has a lot of I'm trying to remember the movie that he did. It was like in the 70s, I think. It was a science fiction movie. Dang, I can't remember the name of it now. But anyway, it's basically he's alone on this space station. That's like the entire movie. So he can do introspective, but we also know, of course, he can do Silent Running, I think is the name of the movie. Yeah. Very good movie, by the way. Highly recommend for your listeners and viewers out there. But he can do the big and brash, and he can do that very self-contained performance. And I think Payne is smart enough to just let him run with it. Like, I'm just going to keep the camera on your weathered character actor face, and I'm just going to let you perform. And there's a lot of directors who aren't willing to do that. Like, again, that sounds like a backhanded compliment or giving him short shrift, but there are many directors who are so in love with their own stylistic choices that they are terrified to trust an actor to just put the camera on them. And Payne is willing to do that. The other thing recently, not relatively recently, that I saw that was willing to do that was that TV show The Bear. There is in season 1, there is an episode where he's at a anonymous meeting and telling his story, and they just keep the camera on Jeremy Allen White's face and just let him perform for 8 minutes of a 35-minute show. Like, just so it's very rare that a director has a trust in their actor to do that. Yeah. And Payne is willing to do that. He's willing to forgo the quick cuts and the camera movements and just be like, I am telling the story of this man right now. He is the only thing that matters. And I think that helps draw viewers into, like you said, that humanism that Payne is able to access.
I agree. And I, again, love how he's able to balance the whimsy of his films with that humanism, the way he's able to elongate on his actors, as you're talking about. And I think there's more subtlety to his movies than people give him credit for. Because on the surface, some of them, Election, I think of Sideways especially, there are scenes in those movies where things get quite
silly,
loud and silly. Yes. Absolutely. But there are quiet movies even in those movies that I think are really great. I mean, one of my favorite scenes in all of Payne's filmography is the moment in Nebraska when the Bruce Dern character, he's just reminiscing in the house that he grew up in. And it's this quiet little moment that is wholly funded on the performances there and that camera work that you're talking about. And it's a moment that is so pivotal to the movie, because for Woody, it's him getting to reminisce and expose something to his son that he had never seen before. And without saying anything, David has this epiphany where he learns something entirely new about his father he didn't know before. And there are maybe 5 words uttered in that entire sequence. It's really great. And you juxtapose that to something like the scene in that film where they're watching football and there's more hilarity, or the bar scene, or you think of Sideways and the wine drinking scenes in that movie. You know, they're like, I love that he's willing to get quiet and intimate amongst the chaos of his movies. And I just love it. I love that balance.
Another thing I really like about him is he seems to make it a point to cast non-movie stars in a lot of these lead roles. Like, obviously you've got Clooney, right, in The Descendants, but you take that out, like Paul Giamatti, I mean, he's a great actor, but he is not exactly, Cary Grant. He is, you know what I mean?
That's true.
And,
Yeah.
And same thing with Nebraska. Like, how often do you have a film that's focused on aging people?
Yeah.
Not very often. Like, you could go through his entire filmography and there's very few quote unquote movie stars. And the time he cast movie stars, he cast Clooney as kind of a schlub and the guy who doesn't actually know what's going on in his actual life. He doesn't let movie stars play movie star parts in his movies. And I kind of love that he's just going to be like, I'm not interested in telling just beautiful stories about beautiful people.
Yeah.
I want to tell a story that other humans, not just the best looking of us and the best acting of us, can relate to. And I think overall he does a pretty fantastic job of that. And like you said, peppering in comedy, and not just like subtle comedy, like out and out wacky, goofy, over the top, sloppy, silly comedy. And you're just like, and still manages to weave it into his movies well enough that it doesn't completely derail the film, and you can get back to the drama and the character work. And he is kind of a master at balancing those things, which is not easy.
Yeah, and to your point, again, I haven't seen The Holdovers, so I can't speak to the performance or how effective it is, although I've heard nothing but great things.
Same.
Is Dominic Sessa, who is starring in his first film role as Angus. So again, to your point, a non-commodity. And from what my understanding of it is the location in which he wanted to, like one of the schools that they scouted for that movie, he happened to attend one of them or something to that effect. Found
living
him.
the dream. Jeez.
Exactly. And then put him in the movie, and now you're starring in a Alexander Payne movie
That's
that might
crazy.
win Oscars.
That's crazy. I mean, I am honestly, like, I love Paul Giamatti, but I might be more excited to see Divine Joy Randolph. Who's like a fantastic singer, a fantastic actor. She is, if people don't know who she is, you probably recognize her if you've seen Only Murders in the Building. She has a recurring role on that show, and she is very good dramatically, very good comedically. Like, I am really excited to see her in, it won't be a lead role, it'll be supporting, but a real role, like something that she can really kind of chew on and get into. I'm excited to see that. And she's getting crazy good reviews. So that makes me very happy too.
I mean, and I think that's another one of those casting choices you're talking about, because that's not a name that is a box office draw.
No, absolutely
not many people will know that much about her. You could say the same thing about June Squibb in Nebraska. Not a name that people are familiar with, but she was nominated for an Oscar, I think.
Yeah, I think she was. Yeah.
She's
great.
so great in that film.
She's
hilarious.
Yep.
So you're right. I mean, there is something deeply true about that, where he's able to, get a lead star, or at least a name we recognize, to, I guess, have some sort of draw, and then surrounds that with.
It's like, I gotta get this movie made, so I gotta call Paul Giamatti again. Somebody remembers Sideways made some money, so let's get you back in here.
I mean, even with The Descendants, you have Clooney, but Shailene Woodley wasn't the star she is now, right?
No,
she
nobody knew who
an
she
unknown
was
at that
then.
time.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And she's so significant to that film. So, this isn't what you're talking about. It's not something I thought about going into this conversation, but it seems to be part of the nucleus of the Alexander Payne formula.
Yeah, totally. I think it's like, I think he kind of realizes that as viewers, if there's more than one super recognizable name, then I think his movies lose genuineness. It's like we can only suspend our disbelief for so long. Like, okay, we'll give you Clooney. But if Clooney and Julia Roberts are in this movie, like, okay, you know what? This is just Hollywood nonsense. I can't deal. You know, we all saw Ticket to Paradise and we're disappointed. We know how that goes. So let's just stick to one recognizable star and leave the rest to just, and there's so many great actors in the world. Yeah. There's so many, there's so much undiscovered talent. I think it's great that a director like Alexander Payne, if he wanted to, could get movie stars in every role. And I'm kind of glad he does it. And I would bet that the movie with the most stars in it, probably Downsizing.
I was just about to bring that up because it has Matt Damon, Christoph Waltz, Kristen Wiig, Jason Sudeikis in it. And there are, to his credit, some names that people won't recognize as well. But comparatively to his others, it certainly has more star power than any of the others by far. Yeah.
But it also does feature who I think is low key one of the best working actors right now, just Hong Chow.
Yes.
She's always phenomenal. I always love, like, did you see what was it called? Driveways?
Gosh, very good movie.
Like, just by the way, if people have not seen that movie, which they probably haven't because it made like $9 at the box office, and I only saw it because I'm in film independent, so I paid to have a screener. It's the only reason I saw it. Her and Brian Dennehy,
oh my gosh,
just phenomenal. And her and the Whale,
Cassidy, just lost. You just perked his ears, and he is screaming to the heavens. Yes, people go, and that is a great movie. I'm with Brendan. That was in his top 10 of 2019, I believe.
Nice, I like it. Yeah,
I'm not that. I didn't put it in my top 10, but I'm also very high in the movie. It's great. I'm with you.
Yeah. She's always great. Like, she's one of those actors that make me wish that Hollywood was actually a meritocracy. We're just like, if you were great, you would be a star, because she would be a superstar, because she is just so fantastic in absolutely everything, even in bad movies, apparently.
And before Driveways, the first two filmmakers she worked with was Alexander Payne in Downsizing. So at the very least, we can credit him with helping her career along. Before that, our beloved Paul Thomas Anderson, Inherent Vice in 2014.
Oh, that's right. Yeah, a movie that I think is a 5-star movie, and a lot of people get really mad at me for that.
It is a 5-star movie.
It's great.
And a top 3 PTA.
Wow.
I
like it.
If we're throwing hot takes out there,
I like it.
And I'm not a hot take artist by any stretch of the imagination.
Don't believe him. Don't believe him. This is what he does. He pretends like he's like really mellow and hears both sides, and then he throws stuff out. So you're like, oh, well, JD's a really measured dude. So I guess that crazy thing he said must be true.
I will say, if you follow me on social media, I very rarely indulge in the hot take artistry, because I don't believe, maybe this is me, I don't know, maybe this is a hot take in and of itself, I don't know. But I don't believe many of these so-called hot takes are genuine.
No, they're not. What do you mean?
Call me skeptical.
They might not. No, they're not. They're absolutely not. People just want to get people talking. Like, I don't believe any of these people when they're like, actually, Martin Scorsese is a bad director. Like, okay, okay, that's just
here's
silly.
The attention that you ordered.
Yeah. Okay, here it is. Now you have strangers on the internet wanting you dead. Okay, cool.
Yeah, like I guess.
But what JD doesn't realize here is that he's made a terrible error.
Oh God.
In trusting me, because the best thing is that I have access to the InSession Film Twitter account, and I'm just going to start posting hot takes and then just write JD at the end of it. Like, it's just going to be great.
But what Dave doesn't realize is I also have access and can delete those.
He'll be spending his entire workday deleting.
All day just deleting tweets.
Screenshots are forever, JD Duran.
Yeah, look, forever. I'm not starving for attention. and I don't believe
enough.
in just throwing out nonsense for the sake of clicks. Like I don't need that. You know, I will be genuine with my takes, and sometimes they're against the grain. That's fine. I do think there is a level of just based off of my reaction to certain films. And when I look at my own top 10 list or top 20 list comparatively to a lot of our peers, I do think it differs a little bit from the norm at times. And I do think there's a level of where the way that I criticize and look at film, it comes from maybe a little bit of a different place. I do think I'm against the grain more than I'm with the consensus.
It's almost
especially
like
this time of the year, but I mean, that's not like an intentional choice. That's just something that I perceive.
I mean, it's almost like film is subjective.
Yeah.
Weird.
Turns out.
Crazy.
Turns out, you know, and that's where, like, you know, I stand up for something like Rise or even that trilogy as a whole. Do a lot of people agree with me? I don't know. Maybe.
Yeah.
I don't know. You know, because, and maybe this is foreshadowing to the conversation we'll get to later, but I would also argue that the MCU's Captain America trilogy, those first 3 Captain America films, if we take those at face value on their own terms, which is somewhat hard to do because it's within the context of an entire universe. But if I do extract those 3 films out and I just look at the quality of those, I would take those 3 films, and I know that I'm going to get a ton of pushback here, but I would take those over Nolan's Dark Knight movies. I would.
Yeah, that's a crazy thing you just said.
Yeah, I know. And look, I get it. I get it. And that's not me coming from a place of, you know, starvation and needing your attention. And please pay attention to me. Like,
Listen to this guy.
I don't
see him
need
backpedal.
that. And it's certainly not coming from a place of, you know, pageantry and look at me. I like, that's just how I feel.
Sure.
You know,
sure. Yeah, I guess my main issue, and we'll, I'm sure, get to this stuff a bit later too, but my issue is, like, I don't even see the third Captain America movie as a Captain America movie. It's like kind of little baby Avengers movie. But Civil War is my favorite of that entire universe. Of all of Marvel.
Yeah,
I think the only one of those I love is Winter Soldier. Like, I think that's a top 2, top 3 MCU movie for me.
That's that one top 5 for me as well.
That one works for me. I think the first one, I like it a little more now than I did upon first release. But I think it's only in connection to those other things, which is kind of, I think, what you're referencing about how it's hard to take these movies at face value. Because, like, I've watched, you know, 670 hours of the MCU, so I have all these connections in my brain.
Exactly. It's really hard to disassociate the entirety of the MCU. And the first film is obviously the only one where it's about Captain Marvel. See, I already got Captain Marvel
if
on
only.
brain. It's about Captain America exclusively, because even in Winter Soldier, it has larger MCU components to it.
Yeah, that movie's the Bucky story anyway. I mean,
Bucky's great. I love that, and I love Civil War, as I noted. So, look, and this kind of circles back to what we were saying about, you know, the futility of comparing Raimi's Spider-Man films to the Apes movies. But if I'm doing that with Captain America and The Dark Knight, I love the first 2 Dark Knight movies. The third one I think is garbage, and I think it is the worst.
Wow.
I think it's the
garbage.
Worst. Maybe that's a little harsh, but I think it's the worst of the 6. So I think as a whole, even if The Dark Knight is the best of the 6, I think there's more uniformity and more evenness with the Captain America movies.
Yeah,
that would be my argument.
I always find it hard. It's a very difficult. Rises is a very difficult movie for me to judge, because I continue to think that, God, if this was 2 movies, we would be talking about the best series of all time.
There's a great movie in there somewhere.
There is, and I don't think it's very far away. And it all comes down to the fact that it tried to be compressed into a 3-hour movie instead of 2-hour movies, which would have been, I think, phenomenal. And you know, obviously, like, this is a weird thing to complain about when a person's life is being mentioned, but you know, we have to understand that, like, things change pretty dramatically when one of your lead characters, the actor, dies. Like, they had a lot to adjust to and things to change, and they had to kind of change on the fly pretty quickly.
Yeah, and I think, if I remember correctly, I don't think Nolan's heart was in it as much because he was wanting to get to.
He was done.
He was done. He wanted to get to Interstellar.
Sure,
so,
sure. Yeah.
You know, that comes through in the final product. And look, I don't blame him. There were challenges. I agree with you. And he was over those movies. And it comes through in the final product. I don't love it. And I think the Captain America trilogy, it doesn't get to the same heights as The Dark Knight, but I just find it more even. And as far as Marvel goes, as far as Disney goes, I think there's a boldness to the Captain America movies that I think is rare in the Disney canon, or at least the Marvel canon. That
no, you had it right with the first one. You had it right with the first one.
Okay, well,
I mean,
you know that.
I'm not trying to be mean. I'm just saying Disney is not known for taking risks. Disney took risks at the beginning of its creation.
Yeah, I was gonna say. The 40s and 50s, yes. For
especially if you look at especially if you look at their propaganda cartoons. Don't do that. Do not look that up. Unless you want your childhood just destroyed. Do not look that up.
Yeah. And I know it's kind of the cinephile pretentious perspective. I understand that. But I look at something like Pinocchio in 1940, and to me that is one of the best animated films of all time for many reasons. But I can't help but admire that film because of how bold it is.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Talk about a financial risk.
That movie would not be made today as it is, and that is clearly evident by the live action remake, and not Del Toro's.
I was gonna say
the garbage one from last year.
Pump the brakes, Duran. Just settle down.
The Del Toro one, but the quote unquote live action remake they did last year.
Wait, I don't even think I saw that. Wasn't Roberto Benigni doing a Pinocchio movie? Is it that one, or is there another one?
No, there was another one. I don't even know if it went to theaters.
I hope not.
It had Tom Hanks in it. I do remember that.
What on earth? Now that's sounding familiar. It's like I blocked it from my mind. It's like my brain is trying to protect me, and it's like, don't think about this.
Yeah, no, it's not good at all.
Oh,
and a big part of it. It was Robert Zemeckis.
Oh well, I could have told you it wasn't good.
Yeah,
I mean, Robert Zemeckis, talk about high highs and low lows. Goodness,
yes. And that's a really low. Even by his standards.
Ouch.
And look, part of the issue with that film, even if you remove the Zemeckis of it all, it is Disney taking what is so great about that film and removing all of that ambition for something that is safe and mediocre. Yeah. If I'm even being kind. It's I don't even know if it gets to mediocre, but
oof. Ouch.
For the sake of being generous, I'll say safe.
Okay, fair enough. Much like the MCU, right? Safe and mediocre. No, is that not what we're?
Well, we could transition to Marvel since we are already heading in that territory. I guess before we do you have any concluding thoughts on Alexander Payne before we get to Marvel?
Just that I'm really excited to see the Holdovers. I'm excited that it actually got a real theatrical release that made it all the way to Podunk, Lexington, Kentucky, to one of our theaters. I'm super excited about that. And you know, I just really like Paul Giamatti, and it's good to see him on screen. I know he's done a lot of TV work lately. It's nice to see him in something real again, because TV doesn't count. only movies.
Exactly.
I'm just gonna make as many enemies as I can. That Loki show you all love, trash. If it was any good, they'd make it a movie. That's
oh God. Well, before we make any more enemies, and I'm sure we will in the back half.
I actually really
episode,
like Loki season 1. I'll say that I enjoyed it
too.
Fun.
But it's great to see Payne and Giamatti get back together. I'm really looking forward to that. Sideways is really great. Mm-hmm. Do love that. I know that is probably the favorite for a lot of people, maybe most people, even when it comes to Payne.
Definitely mine.
And I love Sideways as well. It's probably my number 2, just behind Nebraska, but very much looking forward to seeing them reunite. All right, Dave, let's talk about coffee. It's my favorite drink in the world. Same. I know that it is for a lot of other people. I drink it nonstop because, as I've noted, I got 2 kids. And this is why I rely on Coffee Cult. They're a great company that roast the top 2 specialty coffees in the world. So they do not roast anything that is below that. They don't do any Robusta coffee beans. They don't use any defects in their coffee to cheapen it. It is specialty grade Arabica coffee from really all over the world. The quality is just unmatched, and that's what makes them unique. It might not be the cheapest coffee on the planet, but it certainly is going to be some of the best coffee you've ever had, partially because not only is it the top 2% of quality beans, but they also roast to order. So your coffee just isn't sitting around in some warehouse. Your order comes in, it's then roasted and shipped to you. So it's guaranteed fresh every single time. And it's great. It's fantastic. And as the holiday season is upon us, Dave.
Oh my God.
You're going to be looking for gifts, some stocking stuffers.
Yeah. And if anyone wants to buy gifts for me, coffee is a really, really good choice. I'm just saying. Putting it out there.
There you go. And right now they have a new product out called their Holiday Loot Box. It comes with a mug and a 12-ounce bag of coffee. And because it's a loot, you don't know what kind of coffee you're going to get. It's a surprise every single time. It's random, so there's some fun with it. And that's part of it. You won't know what it is, let alone the person you're giving it to. So
nice.
It's all part of the fun. And you can go and get that at coffeecult.com. For those like Dave that live in bourbon country, you might enjoy this. They just launched a new product. It's a dark roast. It's a bourbon, it's a bourbon barrel aged dark roast is what they call it. Yeah. So essentially these coffee beans have been sitting in a Four Roses barrel for months.
That's my favorit bourbon.
There you go.
You're speaking my language.
It's been sitting in these barrels for a few months, prepping the beans and getting those flavors out. And they're roasting these in a specific dark roast profile for the holiday season as well. And they just launched this as well, that you can see at coffeecult.com. I did get to try the Four Roses one, and it is pretty great. It's really good. Really good, not gonna lie. So that's definitely one to put on your radar for those bourbon drinkers out there. Again, go to coffeecult.com. Use our code and you'll get 15% off on any coffee product they have. Again, that's coffeecult.com. Our code is ISF for 15% off. That's coffee with a K, cult with a K. That's coffeecult.com. All right, Dave, let's talk about the InSession Film Store. We have t-shirts available. I think people will enjoy what we have available. You can, of course, get, our logo on a t-shirt. We have Women in Session logo t-shirts that you can get. We have a Barbie-inspired design. We have a Star Wars-inspired design if you want to do something of that ilk. We have, of course, the hashtag JD Tiers design that you can go and check out there. And we have a couple of new designs that we released over the summer that I I'm very happy with. We have a Midnight Special inspired design. It has the quote, "I'll always worry about you." That's the deal, with a nice little photo there of Michael Shannon. It's fantastic. Mm-hmm. And then we have a new t-shirt product that I'm really excited for. As we get into award season, we talked about this the last few weeks, Dave, that, you know, when you get into awards discourse, it turns into sports, right? Mm-hmm. It's, I don't like that movie because I want my team to win.
Right.
There's a little bit of that.
A little.
And, you know, and so I think quintessentially, I always go back to La La Land and Moonlight. Mm-hmm. This fervent competition for Best Picture. Is it Moonlight? Is it La La Land? Well, the discourse was out of control. Yeah. I am, of course, fans of both. Mm-hmm. And so I think the best thing that ever happened to La La Land is that it lost Best Picture to Moonlight, because now the Moonlight fans get to be happy and La La Land can live in peace and harmony.
Yes, so truly.
Everyone wins. So that is the inspiration for our latest t-shirt design. It just simply says the best thing that ever happened to La La Land is that it lost Best Picture to Moonlight. It's great. So you can go and get that as well. All of our designs aren't available just in shirts. You can get them as mugs, pillows, pins, stickers, magnets, all kinds of fun things. Go to InSessionFilm.com/store, or you can see our store on TeePublic directly at tpublic.com/stores/InSessionFilm. Either way, you'll get access to everything we have available at the store. It's a lot of fun. Again, the holidays are coming up, so it might be a fun little holiday gift for the cinephile in your life. Again, InSessionFilm.com/store. Go check it out and give your special someone a midnight special shirt. All right. I'm going to do my best to be in the middle in this conversation.
JD's just trying to leash me. He's trying to keep me contained and nice, which I appreciate, because I'm bound to say something incendiary, not even as a joke, as I did before.
Yeah. And we somewhat had this conversation earlier in the year when Ryan and Jay were still on the show, when
I'm sure Ryan was super chill and didn't lash out at the Marvel Industrial Complex at all. I'm sure he was relaxed and happy.
I don't think Ryan and Jay are, let's say, champions of the Marvel Cinematic Universe.
No, they make me seem like a fan, which is impressive.
Yeah, they weren't very high. And, you know, I think that's very fair. I guess to reiterate some things I said on that show, because it's been quite a while and there's been a few other Marvel shows to drop since we did that conversation.
I think one just dropped right now. Did you hear it? I think we just had another Marvel show, because there's
just dropped.
So many. Good Lord.
I mean, I will say Loki season 2. Have you seen season 2 at all?
Not yet. Okay. No.
I've actually liked it. I think it's quite good. It's certainly,
I hear good things about it.
In a while. I think it's very good. However, some of the stuff we've seen this year and in recent years, like what was the one that came out with Samuel L. Jackson in August? Secret Invasion.
I heard that was pretty bad.
Oh, so bad. And I really feel for Samuel L. Jackson, because he clearly cared about the character. Mm-hmm. When he was allowed to monologue, when he was allowed to be Sam Jackson, it was genuinely very good. He was great. Sadly, the writing around him was porous. It was absolutely horrible.
I'm trying to remember. I think the last Marvel show I watched was Moon Knight. I think that was the last one. And then I was just kind of like, you know, and I actually, as I've read reactions to it, I think I'm higher on that than most.
Same. And this circles back to what I just said. Like, maybe I'm a little bit against the grain with a lot of people. I don't know. I like Moon Knight.
Is it great? No. Is it good? Maybe.
Yeah.
Is it serviceable? Yeah. And it's got two really watchable actors, and the action was fun. Did it make sense? No, but that's okay. I had a good time with it, but it did still feel like here's the thing about the Marvel TV shows. I'm not even saying that they're all bad or this one's terrible or this one's not. They all kind of feel like work to me personally. Like even when I'm enjoying it, like even when I was watching Loki season 1, which I liked a fair amount, I enjoyed it. But I was about like 4 episodes in and I was like, are we still doing this? Like I just okay, all right, just press play, let's go, let's get through it, and that's not what I want to feel when I'm watching things. Is I don't want to feel like, because I did definitely fall into that trap where I felt like, well, if I want to know what's happening in this universe in the next movie, I have to watch this, and I shouldn't feel like I'm doing homework when I'm watching comic book nonsense. This should be fun. Like that's the whole point. Is it's fun escapism, and it stopped feeling like that for me, and it started feeling like, well, I guess I gotta watch Agents of Shield. I guess I gotta watch this. Like maybe there'll be some crossover, and it seems like they are. I'm sure we'll get to this, but it seems like Marvel is learning lessons a little bit too late. Where now they're kind of introducing these like, hey, these TV shows have nothing to do with anything. It's fine. You don't have to watch it, but if you want to, here it is. And that is probably what they should have done from the beginning.
Yeah, and I think that's perfectly fair. I will say though, I grew up reading Marvel comics.
Same.
And I talked about this earlier in the year when Ant-Man came out. I've obviously talked about this a lot over the years. As a nerd for Marvel, it has never felt like work for me, but I do agree with you that I think Marvel has pigeonholed themselves into this corner where they've overreached and are forcing audiences to commit to doing homework that they shouldn't need to for the movies. The TV shows and the ideas behind them I like, but they really should be complementary pieces, not
necessary.
It shouldn't be obligatory for the films to work. Now, I will say, I think the films themselves have, most of them anyway, I think have done a good enough job of filling in the gaps. I'm looking forward to how the Marvels does this, though, because one of the more prominent series that we had in Phase 4 was Miss Marvel. And if you did not see any of that show, one of the central characters of Captain Marvel comes from that show.
Right.
So unless they provide exposition as to who she is, and I imagine they will.
I hope so.
Maybe question mark.
As someone who didn't watch it, I hope so.
Yes.
So I'm going to be very confused,
Or will they just commit to, hey, you should have done the homework? I don't know if that's fair, but I will say this, going back to Phase 4, because I do think that that's where a lot of the modern discourse really stems from, because everything with Phase 3 ended on this huge high with Infinity War and Endgame. I will, again, this seems to be the mantra of this show, because I do think that I'm higher on the Phase 4 films than a lot of other people. Shang-Chi, I really liked.
Oh, I dug that one. I actually own a copy of that movie, believe it or not. It's good. It's a good time.
I really like that film.
It's so contained. It's so self-contained. It's an origin story. I loved it.
I agree. I think on the whole, and I've argued this before, I think on the whole, Phase 4 functions very similarly to Phase 1. It's almost as if Marvel did a full reboot while still trying to maintain the facade of this larger universe. Because you look at Shang-Chi, that is a very self-contained movie. Eternals, which for me is top tier MCU. I love that movie. I think it's one of their best. And that's also a self-contained movie. There's no larger universe to that movie. We'll move past Spider-Man for now. But like Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness, while it does broaden the MCU, I still think narratively it's pretty contained to Doctor Strange and Wanda and how their conflict opens things up. It doesn't get too much beyond that, and I do appreciate that.
Sure.
And then we open things up a little bit more with Love and Thunder and Wakanda Forever. And of course, No Way Home is thrown in there, and it's just such a very different movie than the rest of them. But
Yes.
Spider-Man No Way Home, I think, is by far the best of the MCU Spider-Man movies. Doctor Strange, I liked enough. I really like the Wanda of it. I don't know if the Doctor Strange works as much, but the Wanda stuff is great.
Is No Way Home, is that the one with all the Spider-Men in it?
Yes.
Okay, yeah, I dug that one. I had a good time with that.
Yeah, I really like that one a lot as well. So the only one of these films, I should say two, it's hard for me to consider Black Widow because
I like that movie.
I like as well, but narratively and structurally, it just doesn't fit with what Phase 4 is really trying to do.
No, it should have been made 10 years ago.
Yes, 10 years ago. Absolutely. Yeah. But looking at all of the others, the only other movie on here that I don't like in any way is Thor: Love and Thunder. I just think that's a bad movie.
It's pretty bad.
As I love
it's pretty awful. Thor. I think my issues with Phase 4 is probably recency bias. Because I did not like the last two movies in that phase at all. I did not like the sequel to Black Panther. I had a lot of issues with it. And again, we talked about this with the Dark Knight trilogy. When you have an actor of that stature pass on, and then you have to adjust. It's wildly challenging. And I like that movie as a love letter to Chadwick, but I don't think it's a very good movie. I think it kind of falls apart. And Thor is terrible. That's up there with the worst movies in the MCU. It is a chuckle fest gone wrong. It's really rough to watch. But I think even after that, then you get in the next phase, you get to me, which is maybe the ugliest movie of the past 15 years, which is the most recent Ant-Man movie. That movie looks like it was shot through a mud filter. It's gross. I hate, like, I was sitting in the theater. I'm not kidding. I was convinced there was something wrong with the projector. Like, I was like, it can't be this ugly.
It doesn't
they
look
spent $200 million on this
it's
movie, and it looks awful. And also, it's just like not very interesting. And like it definitely to me reeks of too much. It's just too much. When, even though I had my issues with the MCU way back when it was like 2 movies a year, these were events. And now it just feels like there's so much constant content that we're just I'm just bombarded with it. And it's hard for me to care. And I, again, comic nerd when I was a kid, and I think this is why the idea of the homework really irks me. Because so here's me throwing my nerd card on the table. Stan Lee has been quoted many times. People would ask him, why do you have these asterisks and going over what happened in just the last issue? Every comic is someone's first comic. Yeah. That's why. Because you never know where people are coming in. So he cared about his audience enough to explain it to them. Whereas these movies are like, oh, you didn't watch the last 9 seasons of TV? Guess you're going to be lost. Guess you'll have to figure it out as we go. And it's like, guys, and like you said, I do agree that most of these movies do a really good job of giving you enough, right? So like, okay, I get it enough. But this one that's coming up is going to be a little bit tougher, I think. And it's a tough balance as a film, right? Because you don't want to just be like, okay, everybody, this is this lady. This is what happened in 12 hours of TV. So now we've wasted 15 minutes of our 2-hour movie. Go. And that's not a good look, right? So it's like they're kind of trapped between a rock and a hard place for sure. But I'm a big Captain Marvel defender. I love that movie.
I liked it too.
I adored it. So I'm actually weirdly excited to see this movie.
Yeah, I'm very excited for it as well. I really like Brie Larson. Nia DaCosta, I think, is a good filmmaker.
Agreed.
I think there's plenty to be excited about. And I accidentally, perhaps ironically, stumbled over this earlier because in my mind, I was thinking about Miss Marvel and Kamala Khan as a character that people might not recognize if they missed that show. However, I don't know how I forgot this, but Teyana Paris as Monica Rambeau comes from WandaVision. So she also doesn't originate from the movie. She originates from WandaVision. And if you never saw that,
who's this lady?
Two of your three main characters come from these sideshows that you may or may not have seen.
Right.
And so now they have to explain who these individuals are in relation to Carol Danvers. I assume the film will do that.
I'm sure.
But there's a possibility it doesn't, right? Like it just relies on you doing the homework. And that's where things will obviously get problematic. But I do think there's a lot to be excited for. But I do think it's an uphill battle because of how two of those three leads come from these side movies, and then there's of course the angle. It's a female-led movie on screen and behind the camera, and there's gonna be the trolls out there that don't go and support this movie just because of that fact alone, which is unfortunate,
sad,
very sad, and I do think you're onto something there in terms of recency bias because Thor: Love and Thunder wasn't very good. And to me, that might be the most disappointing of them all because Thor, for me, in Infinity War and Endgame, was my favorite. I don't even know if it's close. I loved the trajectory there, and Chris Hemsworth was genuinely great in his performance in those movies. So for Thor: Love and Thunder, and also it's maybe a little bit ironic too, because at the core of Love and Thunder is... it's this tender love story between a father and a daughter, which should be up my alley.
That should be exactly what you want.
Know when I'm not going for it, there's something really wrong there. And honestly, I think for me, it's the Taika Waititi of it all. I like Taika.
Too much freedom.
And maybe that's it as well. Taika away from the MCU, I tend to like. So I'm looking forward to Next Goal Wins and some of his other works away from Marvel.
Sure.
And I think there's so much to Thor moving forward because he's such a rich character in the comics that they have not really tapped into in the films, which is why the whole cosmos of it all makes sense in terms of the direction of the MCU. I understand why they want to go in that direction, especially now with Iron Man out of the picture and Captain America out of the picture.
But are they?
Well, we'll get to that here in a little bit. We'll get to that. We'll circle to that. But if they continue this trajectory of the multiverse, which again, in the comics is a fascinating storyline, can they pull that off in film form? We'll see.
Here's the thing. The people who make these movies are not freaky enough. They're not weird enough to make a real multiverse story. Like they're just not. They're going for what sells. A multiverse movie would be so weird and so fun and so great. But I just don't think that this group of people has any interest in being off kilter and weird. Like it would be trippy, it would be twisted, and it could create some real dramatic conflict. And I just don't think that they want to do that. I mean,
because to your point, the formula now has become a lot more even regarding what it was previously at the beginning. And I would never say that the MCU was ever testing cinematic boundaries by any.
They were not pressing the edges. No.
It's a far cry from even Christopher Nolan's films.
Yeah.
In terms of, the cinematic strengths that they're aiming for. However, I still feel like even within that context, Phase 4 and now getting into where we are now, it does feel like it's become even more tame. Which is why, like, there are certain films and TV shows I admire because it does feel as if it's trying to break that mold a little bit. I think that's what I loved about Eternals, because that felt like a Chloe Zhao movie. Yes, it had the Marvel sheen to it, but there was way more Chloe Zhao there than a lot of these other movies and the directors. Say what you will about the Thor movies. I guess Taika Waititi's thumbprint is on them, for better or worse. But Chloe Zhao's thumbprint is on Eternals, and I think for the better. I love what she does with that movie. Or earlier you brought up Moon Knight. It doesn't always work, but there's an ambition there that I really respect, that I love.
Agreed.
And so like there are times where these filmmakers and storytellers are trying to break that mold. However, on the television side of it, it's the structure just doesn't work, which is why it seems as if they're reverting against that now. As did we talk about this a few weeks ago when that news dropped? I'm trying to recall, but where they're going back to having showrunners and Bibles and all that fun stuff.
Yeah. They've reinvented television.
They've reinvented
television.
Like,
guys, yes, you need a voice. Like, what are you talking about? Like, even if you're just going to do it like a comic book does, like there is a showrunner for a run of a comic book too. There's an author who is heading up this story so it makes sense together, instead of just like these comic book nerds, these idiots, they won't know the difference, just throw it all together and it'll be fine. And it's like, guys, you need a voice, you need direction.
Well, and I think
it makes sense.
and not just from a singular perspective, but Kevin Feige from a broader perspective. I think part of the issue now as well, while I appreciate that Phase 4 was more singular focused, it was more Phase 1 in terms of its structure and identity. The problem with Phase 5 is that it's doing the exact same thing, right? Because you have Quantumania, who's establishing Kang and his power and what he's going to bring to the multiverse. Guardians Volume 3, very good. We're getting into the Marvels. Deadpool 3, which is going to introduce something completely different. And then we get to Captain America Brave New World, which is going to establish a new Captain America. Thunderbolts will establish a new thing. Then we get to Blade, which is going to establish that character.
If that even happens, there's rumors that that's not even going to happen.
Assuming that it comes out and that it happens, you're right. But if all of that takes place accordingly, and of course the SAG strike will interrupt some of this, I'm sure.
Yeah.
But at its face, let's say all of those movies come out, Phase 4 will have the same identity, or Phase 5, will have the same identity as Phase 4, where it doesn't build to anything significant. So Phase 1 worked because you established your, 4 or 5 characters, and then it culminated in an Avengers film that made gobs of money.
Yeah.
And it got people excited. Where is this going? Because it's 2023 right now. By the time Phase 5 ends, it's going to be February of 2025. So we have to wait a year and a half to culminate in maybe an Avengers movie. I think from a broader perspective, Kevin Feige is maybe pushing it a little bit in that regard.
Yeah, no, I agree. And it's so interesting, how quickly things change. Like, it doesn't feel like that long ago where we were like, wow, DCEU, what a bunch of dummies. They don't know what they're doing, right? And you look at MCU and they're like, oh, they did the right thing. They made good movies, good standalone movies, or at least solid standalone movies that, like you said, culminated into a crossover event, right? Yeah. Whereas DCEU just like, we're going to start with the crossover event because you all know these people. Like, it was like, that's not how that works, but okay, sure. Yeah. But now it's gone on so long that now the MCU, it's like, are these even events anymore? Are we really excited? Well, like there are going to be people who are going to be excited about this no matter what, because they are fans of the MCU, and God bless them. I'm happy for them. They get to live in this moment, and that's beautiful. But I do find myself wondering, for the general population, which is what really, this is what made the MCU, was the fact that people who don't care about comic books all of a sudden were like, this is an event. I have to go see that. I think that might be over.
Yeah, I think the tides are very much changing. And I think part of it could be quality. Again, I liked Phase 4 more than a lot of other people, but even just saying that phrase suggests that a lot of people were very mixed on Phase 4. And that did seem as if it was the case based on, 1, the box office numbers, and 2, the discourse.
Sure.
It seemed as if it was.
But COVID didn't help either. Like,
COVID
there's
very much
a lot of variables. Yes. Like,
Absolutely.
It's tough. I mean, maybe I'm wrong. Maybe the rest of the movies in Phase 5 are all going to make billions, and I'll be like, well, I guess the fatigue has not set in. Maybe
And
wrong.
I don't think that's the case because, and maybe I'll be super wrong here. The Marvels, I think you're going to have the anti-women make a statement there.
Sure.
On top of those that are already feeling tired, to your point.
Mm-hmm.
Deadpool 3, I think, will be an interesting case study because now we're introducing something completely new to the MCU.
You know what's going to be really funny, JD? When that movie makes the most out of the entire phase. When Deadpool, and it might. Yeah. Because Deadpool and Deadpool 2 made crazy money.
They did very good. And now you're introducing X-Men in a meta way. I don't know if it'll be official. Who knows? But Deadpool 3 is among the canon of the MCU, at least listed here as far as Phase 5 go. And then with Captain America: Brave New World, I'm curious how people will respond to that. Anthony Mackie, I thought, was very good in the show.
Yeah.
And I think it was mostly positive, the reception to it. A little mixed, but mostly positive. So I'm curious where that goes. But then Thunderbolts and Blade, I think, are kind of coin tosses. As far as how audiences will respond, especially because by the time we get to February of 2025, assuming Blade comes out, then we still have no Avengers. We still don't know where this is leading to.
Right.
I mean, maybe through the Easter eggs, they'll be teasing us with something that has more clarity to it.
Stop trying to make me mad. Stop.
I'm just saying.
Well, you got to stick around for the post-credit sequence, or you have to see the movie, Lord.
I will say, and this is where Marvel, I think, was smart because Phase 1 leads to the Avengers, which is a good movie. It makes lots of money.
Yeah.
And so it culminates into something that's rewarding on its own terms. And then, of course, it teases Thanos. And so now we know where the next few phases are going. So I think it got to have its cake and eat it too there, where now there's no cake at all, let alone eat it.
Yeah, it's really true. I don't think I even really thought about this in these terms. I was just like, well, the last few movies have been really disappointing. So I've kind of, it's interesting. I've faded out to the point that I'm like, oh, those movies are still happening. Oh yeah, I guess they are. But you're right. They all like it feels like a lie to even call these last couple phases. They're just like, and next. A phase tells me, okay, there's a beginning, there's a middle, there's an end. It leads to something. And this definitely, at least from what I've seen, doesn't feel like it's leading to a big event. It feels like the MCU, instead of going, okay, we're going to lead to a big event, they think we are the big event. Yeah. And therein lies the problem, because that stuff only lasts for so long. And when it fades, people fade quick. Like the core audience, it might be there, but the general audiences, man, bye.
Well, like, and to that point, you have to keep people's interest. And this is where
hard to do.
It's going to be hard to do. Quality will be really important in maintaining people's interest, because you have to get them to May 2nd of 2025.
Right.
If you get them to May 2nd of 2025, then you're going to start to have your crystallization, right? Because that's when we get Fantastic Four, which will, in theory, bring in a huge group into the MCU that people will be excited for.
Sure.
And then the following two films are your Avengers movies, The Kang Dynasty and Secret Wars. And that's where you can have your Infinity War Endgame, gauntlet there.
Yeah, but I think it's even harder than you're putting it out, because you not only have to get there, you have to get back to movies so good and so fun and so over the top that you watch it and you tell your friends about it. Yeah. Did anybody talk? I mean, granted, we're bad examples, right? Because like we're in the weird cinephile world, right? Uh-huh. But how many people do you think saw Ant-Man Quantumania and went and been like, dude, you got to see this? Or saw Doctor Strange and were like, oh my God, coolest movie ever. Or saw Black Widow. By the way, most of these movies I enjoyed, I liked. but I can't remember a single normal person saying like, "Hey man, did you go see that?" And everyone I know knows that I watch everything. So they talk to me about movies, and I can't remember one time in the past 5 years that somebody talked about a Marvel movie, which is crazy.
I'd say No Way Home was that. I think there was a lot of that.
Yeah,
for
that
No
was
Way Home.
Yeah, that was the last one. You're right. That was, because you had all the 3 Spider-Men, so you had fans of all the series got to have their moment, and you had that. That was an event movie. Other than that, I haven't had a single person ask me about a Marvel movie, and if you had told me that around the time of like stuff like Endgame, I wouldn't have believed you. Because that's all people talked about.
Absolutely. And because they're essentially regurgitating the phase 1 formula, and some of it has been about the same. Because when that first Thor came out, I don't think people were in love with it. I loved it at the time, but I really love that movie now in hindsight, especially. But people, I think, reacted to Thor the way they have, let's say, Shang-Chi or Eternals. The real caveat and barometer of all of this was Iron Man, because when Iron Man came out, he was a B-list Marvel character at that time.
Yeah,
in terms
at best.
of popularity. At best, absolutely. And then Iron Man comes out, and now he's absolutely an A-list. Everyone knows Iron Man. Household name. Right now, in terms of the new characters, so Shang-Chi, unfortunately, no. Eternals, absolutely not. And then we get to phase 5. We'll see about the Marvels this weekend, but I don't have high hopes within the context of this conversation. And then you get to Captain America: Brave New World. It's Captain America, but new characters will be involved there. And then Thunderbolt and Blade. And that will introduce new characters to the MCU that a lot of, especially younger audiences, will not be familiar with. I don't foresee those having Iron Man-like results.
No,
I could be wrong, but I'm
the only one that might is Blade, because
Blade has the potential. Yes.
Yeah, there's already a kind of following for that character, and I was thinking about the Thor movie, which, as you said correctly, was not super well regarded, but that movie still made almost $500 million at the box office. In 2011.
Well, was it 2011?
Yeah.
Okay.
Crazy.
Yeah.
Like its budget was 150. It made 3 times its budget. And that was a movie that people were like, man, I guess it's okay. And it made almost $500 million.
That's insane.
It's crazy.
It is crazy. I don't know if Brave New World, Thunderbolts, and Blade can get to those numbers. I don't know.
Yeah. Like I said, Blade has a shot. But I think Blade will have its issues, because I think that the movies before that, I don't think they're going to do very well.
Yeah.
So then you have that lack of forward momentum, right? I think that's something that helped Thor, right? Is that, people are like, well, it's connected to Iron Man, so okay, we can do this. We can get involved. And when you have that forward momentum, it builds and builds and builds. And we don't have that right now. Things have been going in the opposite direction for a bit now. And I kept waiting for it to flip. And I remember going to see Ant-Man Quantumania and thinking like, okay, this is going to be fun. It's going to be light. It's going to, Paul Rudd is great. And I sat there like miserable. Like, I was just like, why am I here? Like, I'm here alone in a theater watching this drivel. What am I doing?
Yeah.
And as much as I'm coming off as a Marvel hater, I want to make it clear that I actually enjoy the Marvel movies. I do feel like there can be like a lack of originality, because there are many of these films that don't have a stamp. Any movie not Taika Waititi or not a Guardians of the Galaxy movie can feel a bit cookie cutter. I've always said, all these movies are the same and they're all really fun. That's kind of been my experience of the MCU, is that like they follow a formula, but they do it really well and they're really fun, but they've kind of lost some of the fun.
They've lost that muster a little bit. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I don't think, as much as I've enjoyed some of the television series, I do think that by adding them into the agenda, it has put a bad taste in a lot of people's mouth, partially because the quality hasn't always been there. And also now you're starting to overwhelm people.
Yeah.
Because I do wonder if it was just the 3 movies coming out in a year, if that on its own terms would be sufficient. Now, I say that somewhat myopically because we are in the film space so fervently that for me, I see 300 movies a year.
Right.
So 3 Marvel movies, like what was the last one we saw back in May? Mm-hmm. Guardians came out in May. That was forever ago. That was 110 movies ago for me.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Totally.
Like Quantum Mania was 250 movies ago. That 3 Marvel movies in a year is small potatoes for me. Like, it doesn't bother me that much.
I think 3 is the sweet spot if you don't have TV shows.
If you don't have the TV shows. And that's what I was going to say. Like, because I think if it was just the 3 movies, I think people would be okay. Now, again, I'd have to ask the general audience that to maybe get more of a genuine answer, because I watch so much that a lot of this can be drowned out so easily that if you're only going to the theater, let's say a dozen times a year, maybe that is a lot for a lot of people. I don't know.
I think that's way higher than average. I think most people probably go 3 or 4 times a year. Like, and that's which is why theaters are dying.
Exactly, because they're saving their money for these movies, right? Like,
here we are.
And here we are. And now you're adding in this homework of the TV shows, and I think maybe that is overwhelming. If they just removed the television series, I think maybe it'd be a lot easier to build up anticipation and excitement. Even if the quality isn't always there, you can do enough just through the 3 movies alone.
Yeah, I mean, if they survive,
like they're drowning in
Thor: The Dark World, they can survive a bad movie.
Exactly,
it's fine.
Exactly.
But when you have a couple bad movies and like the last 5 TV shows were not great, then people are starting to look at it and be like, oh, maybe this isn't appointment viewing anymore. Mm-hmm. Maybe I don't have to spend my time with this, because most people, unlike people like us, are like, when they get bored, they like write it off, and they're like, I have a lot of things to do in my life. I only see 3 movies a year. I'm not going to waste it on something that might be bad.
Exactly. I mean, because to your point, right before you get the first Avengers, like, people didn't love Iron Man 2 when that came out, but it was quickly followed up by the Avengers. And then you get to Iron Man 3, which was a little polarizing. Mm-hmm. And then Thor: The Dark World, which again, people didn't really love. And soon after that, you get 2 good movies and then another Avengers movie. Yeah. So I think the survivability is very much there if, one, you have something big that people can really look forward to, and also you quickly make up for the mediocre ones with something that people find refreshing.
And maybe you disagree with this, but isn't it worse to have a bad TV show than a bad movie? Bad movie's over in 2.5 hours.
Well, I've always
a bad TV show. Yes. I just spent 11 hours of my life watching this, and it's terrible.
Yeah,
man, what am I doing?
That's primarily why I don't watch a lot of TV, because obviously we do this show.
Big time commitment, man.
It's a huge time commitment, and with 2 kids, I have to pick and choose. I either get to watch TV or I get to watch movies. I chose movies.
Good choice.
So, I just don't get to watch a lot of a bad movie is 2 hours and it's done. It's out of my hair, forever gone. A bad or like a TV series that might get bad, like The Walking Dead. What did I watch? Like 7. I wasted 7 seasons of my life.
I made it 3, and I'm still mad.
Yeah, I mean, and then so like it gets bad, and it gets to a point where you're like, I'm not gonna get to the end. Right. I will never find out what happens to these characters.
And then, but I think when you watch TV, you get stuck in that mode of like, I put so much time into this, I have to finish it.
Yeah,
right?
Exactly.
Here we are. So where's a movie? Like you said, a movie, 2 hours. 3 hours, well, 3.5 hours max if you're watching great art. like Killers of the Flower Moon. But then after that, even if you don't like it, it's over, and
it's done.
You know, and
you don't
because it's not part of this massive universe, you don't feel that FOMO. You don't feel that like, oh, I'm missing out. So now I gotta struggle through something I despise just so I can talk about it with people. But no one's talking about it anyway, not anymore, which is weirdly, as someone who is not the biggest defender of the MCU, as you could probably tell listening to this, I kind of weirdly miss when people were talking about movies. Normal people were like, oh my God, did you see it yet? Can we talk about it? That's cool that it captured the imagination of so many normies. People who would never be caught dead in a theater were there on opening night. Right? Yeah. Ready to go, crying, laughing, cheering with crowds, which I despise. But I'm glad that they got to do that. That's so
the nerds
cool.
won. We won.
Exactly. So just, be happy and make good content products, MCU.
Yeah, that's all we're asking for. Maybe do less TV.
Yes, maybe God, less is more, man. Supply and demand, man. There's too much supply and no one demands it at this point. Like, just stop.
Exactly. So maybe get rid of that. Just commit to the films and commit to at least providing something of good value. Like, it doesn't have to be a great movie. Just good and fun.
Just enjoyable. Are we going to talk about these rumors that they're...
Oh, yes. I guess we probably should before we wind down here.
So I can really talk trash?
Yeah. So I don't know how much stock I put into it, but yeah, there was
very little
that RDJ might be coming back as Iron Man.
And Chris Evans. Maybe coming back as Captain America. It's okay. If this is true, the MCU is lost.
It's done. It's done, as the kids say.
Yeah, if they are actually going to bring these guys back and pay them insane amounts of money, then the desperation has truly set in.
Yes.
Because here's the thing. I don't think when the MCU is right, I don't think it needs movie stars. I think the MCU is the star. I think the comic book is the star. Chris Evans was not a movie star. RDJ was known, but he was a failed movie star.
Yeah.
Maybe the biggest star in these movies, Scarlett Johansson, maybe. She was probably the biggest star at the time. She didn't get her own movie. Yeah. So you don't need a movie star. So if they do this, which I want to make clear. I think this rumor is complete BS. I don't think it's real. It's really funny to talk trash about, but I don't think it's a real thing at all. But if this is real, then they've given up on writing.
Yes.
Because that's what it's telling me. It's like, we're not interested in telling good stories. We just want to package the content that you want, that we know you will buy. So please come back to us. We'll bring you back Chris Evans with a beard. We'll bring you back sassy RDJ. Whatever you need, we will bring you back. And that's not a movie anymore. That's just a film that an AI put together. Like, here are the things you want.
I agree with everything you're saying. And is it too cynical? Is it too pretentious of me to push back on that and say, I don't even know if audiences would respond to that either, because
maybe
of the way Endgame finished.
What are stakes? Who cares?
Exactly. Like, with how those two characters, and the MCU already suffers from this already.
Yes.
Because you can kill and bring characters back anytime you want. They've established this. It's already a problem. But you've committed to Iron Man being dead. You've committed to Captain America going out the way he wanted to, riding off into the sunset as he did. Bringing those characters back, not only does it eliminate the stakes and the emotion of Endgame, but everything we saw post going into Phase 4, especially the Spider-Man movie, dealing with the death of Tony Stark.
Right. It's all pointless.
There's ramifications that is across a couple of different movies, and you're willing to just get rid of that. I don't know if audiences are going to commit to it the way you
maybe
think.
Not. You might be right.
Because at that point, it's meaningless.
Yeah, it's
Why
too
would we
late.
care?
I think it's weirdly too late to bring them back. Like if you were gonna do it, you should have done it right away. And like honestly, I've gotten
Yeah.
to the point as someone who's a gamer, I just want whoever is writing the scripts for these Insomniac Spider-Man games.
Seriously.
Kevin
Seriously.
Feige, will you
Yes.
contact these people? These are great narratives, beautifully
Seriously.
told. And if they could do that on that platform, I see no reason why they can't transfer over to this because it's so much better
It's
than
inherently
anything.
cinematic. It is.
Yeah, it is much better than anything the MCU has done for a decade. And I'm
Yeah.
just like, oh man, this is. I was playing that Spider-Man 2 really, and I was like, man, I don't even want to put this down. I got to go to work.
I know.
Like,
I'm with you. Yeah, I'm probably only I don't know 20% of the way to the game, and I'm already loving the storytelling. I loved the first one.
And I think you and I are about the same age. What year were you born? Were you born in the 80s?
85. Yeah.
Yeah. So you're actually a little bit younger than me. I was born in 79, but there's some stuff here that they go over that is tied so close to the comics that I grew up with that I was like, I was getting a little emotional. I was like, oh my God, like this is a moment. Like I remember this vividly. So I just wish they would, bring them into the fold because get some new blood or, the folks who did Spider-Verse, which are honestly, like, I know they're not a part of the MCU, but I guess here's my hot take. Those two Spider-Verse movies are better than anything in the MCU.
I think that's fair. I wouldn't necessarily push back against that.
Yeah. And that's not to say not to say that the MCU is bad. Those two movies to me are 5-star movies. And I am not a comic book movie person and I am not a cartoon person. So for me to say that is like going against everything that I stand for, but they're so
animation is cinema. Didn't you listen to Del Toro last year?
It's cinema-ish. I'm kidding. So I want to make this. I do actually want to make this point very clear. There is a difference between animation for children and animation. There are animated films that I view as absolute works of art, and some of them you could say are in the realm of kids art form. But then there's some stuff where I'm like, okay, this is not cinema for Dave, and that's okay.
Yeah.
Your kids enjoy it, and that's wonderful.
You're right. I mean, anyone that watches Disney's Planes, okay, that's a movie made for kids.
So, and I think what really irks me, and you know this about me, is the overreaction, right? And this is not necessarily an animated movie, but it's a kids movie. The like Paddington 2 should win Best Picture. And I'm like, okay, guys, it's a nice kids movie. Can we chill? Like we need to calm down. Very few animated films are good enough to be nominated for Best Picture. And that's because most animated films that are made by big studios are really so you can sit your kid in front of a screen for 90 minutes and get some damn peace and quiet. And that's fine. It has its place. But Paddington 2 is a good movie. It's fun. I hate it because of the reaction. Because of the David Ehrlichs who are like, this is the best movie of the last 5 years. And I'm like, is it really? Is it the best movie you've seen? Like, come on, man. I don't respect you anymore.
That's a little bit of the hot take culture we were talking about earlier.
Totally. It's the positive side of the hot take culture. It's the positive
side of it. Yes, absolutely.
And I cannot deal.
I think sometimes it can coexist. For example, the nomination for Beauty and the Beast I have no problem with.
That's the perfect example, right? Yeah. And movies like for me, like Princess Mononoke, I think is a 5-star beautiful film. Animation or not, it's phenomenal. And there are movies that fit in, just like there are action movies that are truly great, right? Die Hard is a great movie, period. Yeah. Predator, Commando, these are not great movies. They are great action movies, and that's fine. They sit in their place on my actual shelf. I own both of them, but they're not Citizen Kane. Can we chill?
Yeah. Aliens is a masterpiece, I would argue.
Yeah, sure, absolutely. And Alien as a horror movie is a
masterpiece.
It's a masterpiece of any type.
So genre can compete in this, and should absolutely be considered.
God, I hate that bear. I hate that bear so much, JD. I can't believe they're making another one. 3.
Yeah. I know. At any rate, bringing it back to Marvel, I do agree with you. I think if they're bringing back RDJ and Chris Evans, they're essentially giving up.
It's a wrap, baby.
It's a wrap. And at that point, I don't know where you go. I do believe, maybe I'm wrong, but I don't think audiences would care as much. They'll see through the facade. Nothing means anything anymore. And also, you've set up this whole multiverse thing.
Right.
And the thing about it is, I think that the solution to this is so in front of their faces because it's as simple as one, just go back to making good movies. Okay?
Yeah.
Do that for one. And two, you've established a multiverse. If
you can do anything,
you can do anything you want except bringing back RDJ and Chris Evans.
Right.
I understand that's a possibility.
Think about how boring that is. Think about how
that's a boring solution.
Where it's like you have a multiverse, you can do anything. You can make them different life forms. You can make them aliens. You can make them not speak English. You can have them crawl on all fours. Or you could do the same thing you did, a decade ago.
Yeah, if Kang could no longer be your baddie because of external factors, you have a built-in excuse to do something completely different. Yeah. You do not have to commit to him. You don't, especially given the way Quantumanium, aside from the post-credits sting, I guess, but the way it ends, you kind of, and it's not as if Marvel hasn't ignored post-credit Easter eggs, by the way. This wouldn't be the first time if they just completely ignore it. And given the way it ends, you do kind of have an out. So just use the multiverse the way you're going to and write in a different way to antagonize it. Yeah. It's really not that hard. And if you're going to bring the X-Men into this, that'll be a quick way to get people's interest and intrigue back into the MCU without having to rely on RDJ and Chris Evans.
Please.
I'm just saying.
Please. Yeah, it's not that hard, guys.
I mean, Dr. Doom is right there.
Yep.
So,
and a great villain.
Villain.
Let's go.
Exactly. Just use him. Yeah. Kang is good in the comics. I enjoyed it in the comics. But you can reinvent what this is going to be. And Doom is a character people know and recognize.
And plus, we can wait for Kang because, we need 9 more phases until we get to anything. So,
Exactly. And if Loki taught us anything, all of the characters or the iterations of the character doesn't have to look the same, right?
Right. Yeah.
So if you recast the role, it's fine. You've already set a precedent for all this. You have so many excuses to get out of this.
Yeah, it's a comic book. That's your excuse. It's nonsense. It can be anything. It's fine. No, we got to keep it boring and the same people.
At any rate, I think that'll do it for this conversation. I think we'll go ahead and wind down here. I know we're going a little bit long anyway, so those are our thoughts on the MCU as it stands right now. We'll, of course, have a review for the Marvels coming up very soon. I think, I assume Brendan will be back for that conversation, so that'll be very exciting.
Who?
Yeah,
don't know him.
This Mr. Cassidy. Yeah, it's been a while. I know people might have forgotten, but
I heard he's like a big time musician now. I don't know if he's ever gonna come
something
back.
Like that. Yeah, married, big time in the music scene there in Philadelphia.
That's right.
At any rate, he'll be back. We'll have a review for Priscilla coming out later this week as well. What else? We'll have a review for the Holdovers, obviously, as we talked about with Alexander Payne earlier. There's a new Women in Session episode that is currently out right now, where they talked about Christopher Nolan and his 2006 film, The Prestige. It was a really fun episode, and it featured Kristen Battistella as well as Shadon Larkey, Erica Richards, and Amy Thomason. Wow. Full lineup.
Full crew. Nice.
Yeah. It was really fantastic. So go and check that out. Dave, as the editor-in-chief of the website, will tell you that there's a lot of great reviews on the website you can go and check out, including an Ivan's Childhood review that he wrote himself.
Yeah, it's basically the MCU, right? No difference.
Exactly.
Yeah. I was lucky enough, for once, something cool happened in Lexington, Kentucky. They were having a little mini Tarkovsky festival, so I get to watch all 7, and I'm gonna review all 7. The first one was Ivan's childhood, and we're moving on to Andrei Rublev next. So hopefully you'll have a review of that soon as well.
Yeah, very much looking forward to that. So please go and check that out on the website. Love all of the written reviews we have up there, articles, essays. We have a lot of fun stuff up there. Again, that's InSessionFilm.com. Be sure to follow us on social media, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, YouTube. If you're watching us here on YouTube, be sure to subscribe, hit the like button, all that fun stuff. If you can leave us a review on Apple Podcasts or Spotify, we'd greatly appreciate it. That really helps out the show as well. And one other final thought here real fast. We have a new Patreon member, and Austin Belzer. So thank you to Austin for supporting us there on Patreon. If you want to help us out on Patreon, that's patreon.com/InSessionFilm. You can sign up for as low as $1 a month, and we have some fun perks up there. We have some exclusive Patreon content that we'll get back to as soon as Brendan is back next week on the show. So we'll get to that, but thanks to Austin for his support. And again, if you want to also support us on Patreon, that's patreon.com/InSessionFilm. Dave, any final thoughts on anything before we get out of here for today?
Just real quick, you can follow me on Twitter at DarnThatDave, and if you'd like to be a writer for our wonderful website, just either let JD or me know, and we will get you involved and guide you through the process. We always are looking for new and different voices for the site.
Yeah, definitely hit us up. Always looking for new writers, as Dave noted. InSessionFilm@gmail.com. Great way to leave us any feedback, but certainly if you want to write for the site, you can definitely email us there. I don't know if I have any other final thoughts other than just to note that the Matthew Perry news last week. I want to say it dropped soon after the main show was released, because we didn't really get a chance to mention it last week. Was really surprising to me and heartbreaking. I didn't grow up watching Friends or anything, but it was a little surreal to see my wife's reaction to it. I think she responded to it similarly I did to something like, Philip Seymour Hoffman, because that one gutted me. Yep, and she was really taken aback by that, as was a lot of people. He was always my favorite on that show. I didn't watch it religiously, but I loved him on that show.
Yeah, that was my show. Maybe you and me and your wife were around the same age, because that was a big one for me. And I also have a personal connection to it because my day job, I'm a substance abuse counselor, and he had his struggles with substance abuse, but also has created a bunch of housing for people struggling with substance abuse, and now there's a Matthew Perry Foundation, and all the money is going to help those with substance abuse issues, because that was something he worked very hard on to get through in his life. So
absolutely. So and I do love that people were really talking about that after the passing. It wasn't just his his film and TV performances. I know some people talked about some of his work outside of Friends. Well, of course, talking about Friends, but a lot of people were noting that it was his work after the show in dealing with substance abuse, and his fervent passion for helping people with it.
Definitely.
That was a big talking point, and that was really great to see. Certainly he would have been really proud of that for sure. So
definitely.
At any rate, I'll go ahead and leave it there. Thanks, Dave, for being here, man. This was a pleasure. Really appreciate you filling in for Brennan these last 3 weeks. So,
yeah, you're welcome. I was happy to be here. I apologize to all your fans who love MCU movies. I'm sorry if I was mean. I didn't mean to be. Love what you love.
Yeah, love what you love. Absolutely. Dave will be back to talk about the Marvels in our review.
God,
just kidding. At any rate, really do appreciate it. All joking aside, it was a great time. And thanks for listening, everybody. Thanks for watching. We'll see you all next time on the InSession Film Podcast. Do not bring back RDJ. It's not necessary.